when you're working in the investment sector, everybody has hopes, everybody has ideas, everybody wants to make a change. But the question is, how well priced, right, are those ideas, those risks, those opportunities? And I was like, this podcast can be used to find out what is the state of men's marketing in Africa. And what we found was really, really interesting. The marketing mediums for men are not as many, right? And so that's the thesis that Mantalk is trying to break. So that we cannot just see fast-moving consumer goods defining marketing here, but also we want to see locally produced goods for men having access to markets, because these guys need products. I think stories move money faster than models move money. Content storytelling shine a light on new opportunities where capital can grow and create alpha. Hi, my name is Oscar. I am a founder of RevGen Media, which owns the podcast Mantalk.ke, and I am an investment associate at Acumen. I previously was a lawyer, but now I'm a venture capitalist, so that's interesting.
So you described data protection as your first love. Mm-hmm. How does one internship at Cisco end up shaping your entire worldview?
It's a fantastic question. First of all, I have to say I'm a massive fan of the podcast.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here. So yeah, data protection is my first love. How I first encountered that is, this started all the way back in high school. So the head of legal for Cisco, his name is he's a gentleman called Mark Chandler. And his son Will came for exchange and alliance, and me and Will struck up a really good friendship. And then Will went back to the US, and then I stayed in Kenya, went on to go to law school. I didn't know his dad was the general counsel of Cisco Global at the time. And then what ended up happening was that they were coming back to Kenya. So we spent a day with Will and his family, and we had such a good relationship with him and his family, and they were such amazing people. Then the dad had that, I was also a law student, and I had this light interest in data protection, because at that time that was when there was a lot of noise around GDPR coming to the EU, what it meant for the EU as a single data market, and I was just really interested to read more about that. So he then kind of asked me hey, would you consider it? Would you consider an internship in London? And when I went and experienced basically data, not just as something that we consume as a customer, but as this economic asset with real human consequences, right? Like how we use data, how we monetize data, how we think about data management and structuring and policy making around data, ultimately is an economic asset that can be leveraged to just, create not just value within companies, but also to create opportunities for those who are underserved and unseen. So once I kind of understood that,
yes,
the game became, okay, what does it mean to protect this data? What does data protection mean? What does good governance mean? Is good governance just a cost center for companies? But my time with Mark's team in London showed me that good governance and data protection at that time is, and still is, I think, till today, especially now in the age of AI, I think it's a dream that's come true, is a moat. It's a good moat. A good startup with good data protection handling is a good moat, because they're able to track and identify their customers and users and then optimize that towards the next big product. And I think now with the age of AI, that dream that started all the way in 2015 is now what's come to life, where data protection, proper data protection frameworks have led to the generation of this new exciting slew of companies who are able to use this information in a way that's safe and a way that's helpful for the next generation of companies.
What's your take on how then relationships shape our early careers? My
relationship with Mark at that time added a lot of value. But then soon after I left Cisco, I then came back to Kenya, worked for Transparency International, and with the University of Humboldt in Berlin, published a book on land corruption risk mapping. I was only 20. I think I was just 20 years old. And when we were working together, the interesting thing that happened is that I then got to experience the local contexts within which businesses or within which Kenyans operate. And those local people, there's a gentleman called Juma who's in Mswambweni, who I'm in contact with till today. kind of opened my eyes to the realities that Kenyans often face. Whereas Mark showed me this like macro view of this is how technology businesses run in a Fortune 500 companies, like that view that I learned from working with the team in London and Louis Kennedy and other amazing names I can keep naming. But that view, when you contrast it with what the reality is on the ground, on like, okay, this is what is happening in my own local context, in my own local country, it allowed me to create this bridge of understanding that, the ideas and frameworks that we develop up here ultimately shape the destiny and interests and life of these people all the way here. So like, it was a question of like, people have vastly different experiences that are fundamentally interlinked, not just through the decisions that we make, the products that founders create, not just by the policies that are being made, but also by being able to identify the human beings that are actually using these products and like causing the change that they need to make in their lives.
I'm taking you back to the uni days. Yeah. Your dissertation opened doors into cybersecurity and ESET.
You've really done your research. You know about my dissertation. That's crazy. Yeah.
Yes. So what would you say the 22-year-old Oscar saw in tech regulation that most people missed? Yeah,
that's a great question. Again, So, talking about my dissertation. So came off of Cisco. Coming off of Cisco, I ended up at ESET after that like jump into like the weeds with the book with Humboldt, and then came back out so I wrote a dissertation after my time in Cisco. So the dissertation was on Africa data protection regulation. And the dream then was, oh my God, like there's this incredible opportunity happening in the EU. It's a much smaller market if you think about it, because like here in Africa, we are the fastest growing youth populations. We have about 2 billion, I think, young people who are going to be working across the continent in the next like 10 to 15 years. Very exciting opportunity. So for me, what I think I saw was exactly what I've explained in Cisco, where I'd sat in an office and I'd seen, oh my God, these are technology products that are actually changing the way people live, play, and work, as what Cisco used to say back in the day, and how they interact with cloud technologies and how like they're able to like create a lot of value within the markets that they play in. And I was like, in Africa, we have this fundamental opportunity, right, to actually use tech regulation to create one single market. That was like my dream back then. Still holding on to it. It's 10 years since it's not happened. It's 10 years, it's not happened. So like that's the dream, which is like this single, so we need proper tech regulation to create this single market of technology products and services that I think would be setting up the next generation of wealth for Africa. And at that time, there was a lot of excitement around the Silicon Savannah. There's a lot of excitement about new startups that were popping up here in Nairobi. So really, I think that was a really, really exciting time. And my time at ESET at that time, I was working as the head of cybersecurity policy, and you wouldn't believe it, sales. So
we wouldn't believe it.
You won't believe it. You won't believe it, sales. So I used to be, again, I used that South Sea savviness where it was like, hey, Nyaje, sorry, I'm going to speak Swahili, but like, so like I'd now go into the Central Business District. And in Nairobi, I know she has a lot of viewers, so I know your viewers are from all over the world. But in Nairobi, you have a central business district. And in that central business district, there's a place called Jamia Mall. And every student who goes to Jamia Mall usually buys a laptop and a cybersecurity product.
Yes.
Yeah, it was us who pushed that to happen. It was like, hey, whenever you sell a laptop, just upsell the cybersecurity product on top of that, like so it's antivirus, so that like someone can buy that and like tell them that, it's going to make their data safe, because at that time there's a lot of awareness around that issue. This was around 2016, 2017. So there's a lot of awareness around that issue. So it was really interesting to also see that and how competitively, while someone's selling Kaspersky, why are they buying ESET? Why are they not buying like other brands right, of antivirus products, and like finding out, okay, who's the distributor? How is technology actually bought and sold within our region? So it created this understanding of, I understand the market of how like physical products are actually sold through distributorships across Eastern and Southern Africa. I then also got to understand, okay, how does tech regulation enable that market? Because like you can imagine at that time, the Data Protection Act was in its draft format, and there was a lot of conversations around it, especially around sensitive information in hospitals. So hospitals were taking on a lot more data protection products. That was like about $20,000 worth of new business, right? Yes. Law firms also at the time, and that's actually how I got my pupillage. the law firm I used to work for, which is called Cisco Law, we sold them a phishing software product, and I was the guy who handled the sale before I went to law school. And so after they were like, yeah, there's that really bright guy who knows how to fish and he's a lawyer. You get what I mean? So like, yeah, tech regulation is just like its ability to create markets is what I learned in that time.
Your face brightened up when I asked this question, and when you're talking about your deep interest, even at that time, within that data protection space, it makes me question how you balance your desire to stay in that field with the pressure to complete your legal training.
Oh, that's a great question. About that time, so I spent a lot of time at ESET, and then I had, so I was a law student before. I spent a lot of time at ESET, spent about 1.5, I think, years at ESET, and then I had to leave. I'll be honest, that time my family was like, dude, I know you're getting paid, but like you have to be an advocate. That was what you was originally on course for, like don't get distracted. So ended up moving from ESET to law school, which was a pain in the neck. Like it was, if you ask me, I question that decision until today. But you know, at that time, unfortunately, I don't think I had the presence to say like, hey, this is what I want and this is what I believe in. But I was still kind of trying to figure myself out, and I was open to that experience. And at that time, credibility was really important. I don't know if you know, like, you know, you can't practice as a lawyer in East Africa unless, like, you know, and you can't go to court. You can't. There's a lot of stuff you couldn't do unless you became an advocate. So sacrificed 2 years, went to law school, grueling time of my life, and then became a lawyer, an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, soon thereafter. So I was lucky enough to work with Cisco Law, which is this lovely law firm, really, really pedigreed firm here in Nairobi. It was an amazing experience. But yeah, and that is where I then met my current love, which is finance.
You also did your master's, did you not?
I did my master's soon after that. So just before I did my master's, so how now I kind of transitioned into finance completely is by doing the master's in finance and law. So like what happened before was that I was working a lot in M&As and public-private partnerships in that deal team in Cisco Law. And the reason why that was so amazing to me is because we'd come up with, so you'd like 5 guys enter a room and sit down and say, hey, we're going to build a student accommodation hostel that's going to host nearly 10,000 students and do this incredible thing in urban real estate in Africa. And you're like, oh, that's crazy. There's no way they're going to pull that off. And then like you watch these entrepreneurs and these amazing people like just generate, you know, a real estate investment trust, a green bond, you know, list that, like form associations so that they can be able to create the influence necessary to deploy that capital, then finally create a project that is now called Kwetu and Kejani, where children live in. And it all starts from a balance sheet. It all starts from guys sitting down and coming up with a financial model. And then that model actually turns into lives. I was like, yeah, that's the piece that's been missing in my story, right? Like, I loved the idea of working in tech in Cisco and the impact it had with the people in Msoambweni, but I just didn't know that, like, what's this middle part? Like, I didn't really have that, like, that missing middle of what it really takes to make these projects and to operationalize these ideas such that it causes real tangible impact. And that's what I saw in Cisco, which is like, yes, we're lawyers drafting contracts, but then we're also helping people with very big ideas effect them. And finance is fundamental to that, right? And that's when I fell in love with finance, right? Like it became like, it just entered the body, and it has been my sickness since then. It's been part of who I am, and I'm really proud of that, like, competence right now that I've managed to acquire from that experience. So after that, that's when I went to do a master's in finance in Queen Mary. An intense year, because it was a double degree in finance and law, because I still wanted that optionality for my legal competence so that I could be able to, in case this finance thing doesn't quite work out, I also wanted to make sure, like, yeah, just make sure you have optionality. But then, yeah, fell in love completely with finance, and I've been blessed enough to kind of land opportunities in venture capital to kind of use that ability.
Finance has been your sickness since then.
It's been my sickness. I'm sick. Sick, like I need medicine.
Sick
like,
in love.
Sick in love. Like it's my first wife. Like
Data protection was your first love, and this is your first wife.
It's my first wife. Yeah.
So how did your legal skills then translate into your investment approach, especially when working on projects like Acorn and rates?
Yeah, the real estate investment
Yes.
trust and the M&A and
Yes,
public-private
and
partnerships.
exactly.
So the golden thread, I'd say, because that came, so basically what I've done, the finance stuff was before. So the finance stuff comes after that, right? But then what I've carried from those experiences into these new deals that I'm doing now as an investor at Acumen, because that's where I work now, is that you now have to have a proper understanding of risk, right? And you also have to understand that when you're working in the investment sector, everybody has hopes, everybody has ideas, everybody wants to make a change. But the question is, okay, how well priced, right, are those ideas, those risks, those opportunities? Like, that's the question that you have to ask yourself. It's like, okay, if let's say you want to provide access to, let's say, water, right, for a particularly underserved community, I think that there's a way that you can be able to structure it in a cost-efficient way such that it gives them access. You're breaking a structural inequity where they never had water access before and they came from a particular community and they couldn't get it. And you have a startup that has come up with this amazing technology that enables them to access that water for cheap. What a story. Everybody clap for that person, right? But then it's now time to, okay, let's really get in the weeds, right? The startup that you're operating, right? What's its working capital cycles? Like, how quickly do you make money? Like, how quickly do you sell the water? When I say working capital cycles, it means like, how quickly do you stock that water? How quickly do you sell that water? Do you sell that water on credit? Do you sell that water on credit? How quickly they pay back for that credit? Is there a debt that you're incurring to supply that water? And how quickly do you pay off that debt? And that interplay then unlocks cash, which means that now, it's a cash generative business. Okay, where does that show up? In your revenues. Okay, this revenue that you have, how are we flexing that on a curve to grow it? Right? So that's the finance bit, right? And then I move that aside. I'm like, the finance bit, now that we've thought about it a little bit more, this water that this person is accessing, right? How does that right to access, right? How limited is that right? Right? Where are they getting the water, right? Are you using legal or illegal means to get that? How ethical is that business? Like, what's the impact of that business how consequential is that business within, from a regulatory perspective, right? Are you doing it the right way? Are you working with people within your startup the right way? You get what I mean? Are you constitutionally represented? Like, is there a gendered curve within that? Is there like a gendered curve that's driving that scale? So there's a lot of questions that I can use my legal hat to wear, where it's like, I can also predict if, the government in this side said there's a water policy coming out. How does that impact your startup? So that question of the linking between legal, finance, and investment is actually it's just one proper process. And the ability to be able to put them together is what then enables me to be able to actually de-risk a business. I drop the risk of that business. I also say, I've noticed that where you're sourcing your water, this risk might come up, right? You might have to litigate for it. So why don't you negotiate with this person and get a better deal? So you see, it allows me to put on so many different hats whenever I'm doing anything. And it's a gift, if to be fair.
I think it's a gift and also a result of really hard work and being open-minded about not just having one career path, which we'll still get more into because it's another hat that you wear, that people always see you in the seat that I'm sitting on and rarely on this other side.
Yeah, rarely. And you're also sitting on my good side. That's weird.
Actually, you've mentioned that, okay, you do work in investments for Acumen.
Yeah.
Was that always the plan? To get into the investment venture?
100,000%. Always the plan. I thought, so this is what I'm going to say. So in the investment cycle, you have something called a J curve, right? So venture capital in the beginning, growth equity in the middle, mature private equity in the top, right? So mature private equity means acquisitions. So this is Safaricom buying an Airtel or something like that, right? Then here in the middle is your growth company, right? Yeah. Which is my tech story, praise God, 10 years. Yeah, 10, 6, 7 years from now, where it's you've focused on this business. It's now achieved a certain level of maturity. There's customers that you have. There's a lot of revenue traction that you're generating. It's making a lot of sense. And now you're growing towards maturity. It's called growth equity. So your shareholding is growing. your equity value is growing. And then at the bottom, we have something called venture capital. So like venture capital sits at the bottom, which is now seed, pre-seed, right? This is high risk, founder dependent most of the time, right? Motivation dependent, extremely like, it's like there's a valley of death in there if you're not able to survive. So I always thought I'd end up like in growth because of my PPP, M&A experience, or I'd end up in mature private equity. But as like luck would have it, I ended up in like VC, which is like here at the bottom. But like here is where a lot of innovation is happening, right? This is where my skills are needed the most, from the data protection hat that I can occasionally wear, from the legal hat that I can occasionally wear, to the recently, my first wife now, my finance hat, I can wear that as well. Because you have to understand investments as a partnership between founders, right? Like this founder has this amazing idea, and every time you write a ticket and enter that business, you have to create value with them jointly to move up that curve. Like, yo, I need systems, I need processes, I need to understand how my stock is moving, I need to understand, like, okay, who's the best hire at what time? See what I mean? Like, that's here, right? So this is where dreams come to live and die, right? But then when you get up here, right, things get easier. Now it's the exciting company. You don't know about my tech story, very exciting company. They started as a podcast, now they're a full-fledged media business. So like, so like that's the thing, right? Like it's where my skills are needed the most that I ended up at, and I'm working with the most amazing at Acumen. It's an amazing opportunity to really like get in the weeds and to really understand what impact is in the African context. An investment house that has been doing it since 2001, right? It's something that like as a young guy who's like really energetic and really wants to understand the context within which investment comes into. Like that's where like I got lucky enough to get some of my training on, and I have an amazing team and I'm learning a lot from them. So like that ability to sit in that office and understand this is what impact is. This is how you work with founders and then you grow them up on the curve. And this is hopefully how you exit. So like you see, all these lessons are really kind of fundamental to my development. I don't know if I've answered your question, but
you have answered my question. There's no right or wrong way to answer the questions. You seem to have bet a lot more into the climate and agri-tech space right now. What would you say we're still getting wrong?
As deal makers, as people who are working in the investments world, we need to underwrite actual business performance, right? Not just the impact and the hope, but also making sure that we are funding the right entrepreneurs, right? And when I say funding the right entrepreneurs, this is what I mean. I mean, remove the biases that have previously existed within our investment economy, which is like, just because someone doesn't speak a certain way or look a certain way, you don't believe that they can build a business of a particular nuance. No. Listen to their story. You understand? Look at the business and how it performs, and look at how they are managing to like create impact in their own unique way, and try and see how you can communicate that thesis jointly. What I've seen is like, as deal makers, sometimes I don't know, maybe it's a historical thing. We can be skewed towards certain biases, and like I'm lucky to work in a place where those biases might not necessarily exist, and I'm given the opportunity to actually sit with a lot of local entrepreneurs who are doing really amazing things. So that's the first piece. The second piece is, I think that focus on actual business performance, not on the other fluff and the nonsense. The second thing that I think investors could get more right is we need to start defining impact, I think, much more inclusively, in a much more inclusive way, right? In a way that also takes the input from the entrepreneurs, right? Listen to what the entrepreneur is telling. If the entrepreneur says A, like this will impact in the sense of this is how this business impacts the community, right? If let's say, let me see if I can give you an example. If let's say this person is making a product more accessible, like let's say it's an education product, which have school fees, right?
Yes.
And the way in which they have school fees probably requires them to work with maybe the public system of education, right? That like, you know, then don't suddenly create like a barrier towards them getting investment by saying we don't fund government, like companies that work with government because they take too long to pay. It's like, if they're able to execute and they're able to validate that their revenues and they're able to do these incredible things, I don't think as investors we should create barriers to access to that capital.
Yeah.
There's a lot of instances that sometimes can happen. And we must define impact jointly with the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur must also be along for the journey of that definition and that validation and that verification of the impact that we're trying to make as investors. I think those are the two things that I've noticed that are really, really insane, which is like measure business on actual business performance. Like put the founder is important, it's key, but don't discriminate against anything. Just look at the business and see what he's doing and listen to the founder. Yes. And what they're saying about their business model and the impact that they generate.
Yes, and not just the biases that you've said.
And don't start talking to a founder as if they don't know what they're doing. You know what I mean? That's the thing I'm saying. Like, a founder tells you, this is how I'm doing things. Alafuna, you're the one, sorry, I'm speaking Swahili again. And then you're the one telling the founder, this is what it is. It's like, no, he's the founder. He's the one in the trenches. Like, listen to what he has to say. Yeah.
Or she.
Or she, sorry.
Now, we've covered quite a bit of ground on your work experience, which has gone across the board.
Okay.
And now I want to take you to the other thing that you're involved in, which is podcasting, which is also quite an interesting contrast because as someone who's been in this space for quite a bit of time, and so have you, there's an assumption that, and I think now people are open to it, but before it was, why would you start a podcast or do this if you're heavily involved in a career path like finance or law as a professional? So my question is, why would a venture investor launch a podcast? And what's deeper in play? You know, there was from APVA Podcast of the Year to Spotify Sounds of Africa. Your platform, Mantalk, that you do with Eli Mwenda is resonating. So what's deeper at play? Why podcasting and why now?
Oof. Like I said, like, this is the most, where's the camera? Is my camera that one? This is the most researched interview I've ever done. Like, you guys went, asked me about my dissertation, now we're talking about podcast. Like, that's crazy. I was 25 years old. At the time I was 25, I just finished law school. Like you said, I've done all these like fun things in my early 20s. You know, the expectation was I'd be somewhere in my mid 20s. That didn't pan out the way I thought it would. I was actually like an associate at a law firm. Yes, I have all this global exposure, but what has it really translated into? And then also at the same time, I have a lot of questions about life, right? And I'm busy trying to figure out, okay, what is it? What is it? Where can I get these answers? And the content at that time online was just like super crazy. Like, pay for a course, like then I'll tell you what you need to do. And I was like, okay, let's really research and dive deep into this like male content, right, that's going around the world at that time. That was 2017, 18. And like what came out of that like research process was actually shocking, right? So at that time, suicide rates in Kenya had doubled. And that was 2017, 2018, 2019, suicide rates had doubled, right? And we were just entering COVID where suicide rates in Kenya also increased dramatically at that time. So suicide rates were an astronomically high. Content that would support men's wellness was an all-time low. Here in Kenya especially, there was absolutely nothing. And I had a friend at the time who was opening a barbershop, and like I'd just come fresh from researching these bits of information. I told him, like, dude, like if you create a podcast in your barbershop, you'll have tapped into a wellness market that no one else is really doing, right? And it's called Castro's Man Cave, incredible place. And he told me, I actually have some friends. You should really sit down and meet them. And then we sat down. At that time, I had no social media. You won't believe it. I used to think social media is the enemy of the world. Look at me now. And we shot an episode. Me and Eli met, and then me and Eli in that shoot were like, yeah, dude, you're really smart. Like, we really connected because I had been in London. He's from the UK, and like we spoke. And I was like, Then he was like, dude, we really need your help. We're trying to structure this into something serious, and you look like you know a little bit about like structuring things. Why don't you come and do it? And the amazing thing is that like we used to have meetings in the boardroom in the law firm I used to work. I used to sneak them in. Now you know. I used to sneak them in, and like it became first of all this brotherhood, and then over time that brotherhood had two members remaining, which is me and Eli, because the other two had other commitments. Then we formed a company, and then now like decided, okay, we're going to keep doing this Mantalk thing just for that positive impact for the next couple of years. Now, the weird thing that happened is that I said, okay, right? Like, and at that time I didn't have the finance hat, right? I was just a young lawyer. So I was like, okay, I've seen these guys who are building big buildings say we need to project. So the question now became, okay, what would be the total addressable market for Mantalk.ke? Like, what's the TAM, right? What's the serviceable obtainable market for Mantalk, right? And what's the total addressable market? What's the serviceable obtainable market? And how do I like narrow that down and kind of test for that? Like, and I was like, this podcast can be used to find out, okay, what is the state of men's marketing in Africa? And what we found was really, really interesting. We found that a lot more marketing dollars were going towards women than men. And a lot of the marketing dollars that were going into men's marketing were alcohol, betting, cigarettes, basically sin goods, like excise goods, is what is driving men's marketing. I was like, wait, that's really weird. At the same time, in fast-moving consumer goods for men, right, about 50% of those budgets, I'd say about 50% of those budgets can still be used by men. If you buy a bar of soap, a man can buy a bar of soap, a woman can buy a bar of soap, right? But then gendered products, which is like for men specifically, it's about like 10 to 15% of those products. But then those 10 to 15% of products don't have market access to this like 35 million man demographic across East and Southern Africa. What is this 10 to 15% willing to pay if I can boost their revenues by making these guys have access to those products? But then the question is it that men are using these products less? Populations for men are growing. They're growing proportionately with women. But the marketing mediums for men are not as many, right? And so that's the thesis that Mantalk is trying to break. And we're entering this new phase of being more than a podcast, where we're going to say, we need to create third spaces, we need to create content, we need to create websites, we need to create media that is specifically targeted to that 35 million, so that we can not just see fast-moving consumer goods defining marketing here, but also we want to see locally produced goods for men having access to markets, because these guys need products. But no one seems to care about how it is that they get access to those products. So there's a lot of planning that's going on right now behind the scenes between me and Eli and the rest of the team to see, okay, how do we build, because the thesis has worked. We've now grown our audiences to about, if we're in a season, we do about 1 million views. So it's like, okay, of that 1 million, 55% are men. So like, how do we like actually turn that into a revenue driver for this company that we own? So it's a tough question. It's one that, as you can hear, I'm still like, there's a lot of statistics on the back of my head, just trying to figure out, okay, how do we actually execute that? But the gap is apparent. We can't let like excise goods be what defines what marketing is and fast-moving consumer goods from different companies across the world. We need local products that can also add value to men. I want to Kente from Ghana. How do I get it? Yeah.
So just to clarify, you're saying that majority of the marketing budget as it stands now goes to women?
Yes. Absolutely.
You sure?
100%.
Okay. Nani amekusha?
Nani amenisho? Sawa. Unilever's budget, Facebook budget alone for Facebook ads was 95%. That tells you everything you need to know. Your 5% ingine ni gani? If you walk out right now, like, and you ask yourself, I want to see like male-specific advertising for men, not like your generic kawaida product. Most of it is betting. Most of it is betting and alcohol. So like the question has to be, okay, like, is it a factor of like, that's what men are interested in? Or is it a factor of like marketing mediums need to create more spaces where we can advertise that? If you ask a man today, where do you gym? It's his boy who told him. It's not like there's a website. There's a central source of truth that tells you how to, like, for example, like how to look for a gym, like how to lift weights, like what's, like, as an African man, how are men in Ghana dressing? How are men in Kenya dressing? How are men in Tanzania dressing? Like, you get what I mean? Like, there's no fiber. Whereas if you look at men's health in America, this is a specific product for men. Like, it's a specific media product for men. So yeah, that's my thesis.
That's a really good thesis.
I hope so.
So how do you see content and capital then working together to shape the future of African innovation?
Oh, good question. Content and capital. You're doing that now. So I can see a biased question in the range. I think stories move money faster than models move money, right? So your stories, your ability to tell stories, to put policymakers, to put innovators on a chair, to put thinkers on a chair, and to ask them questions about what they think and how they think, ultimately pushes us towards a space where now where capital can flow into newer, more, I'd say, innovative and like more novel like approaches towards where money can go. Like you're shining a light, like storytelling, content storytelling, shine a light on new opportunities where capital can grow and create alpha. And that's the unique value experience, right? Even my story of trying to innovate in men's marketing, what essentially I'm saying, I'm trying to say if we can create this much value in that market, we want to capture some of that value. That's the commercial return on our time. And like it's the same thing for you. If you're able to create like so much visibility as a female founder of a media business around technology and investing in technology across Africa, then the thing that ends up happening is you will ultimately capture some of that value. And that's the power of content, where like if we shine a light and discuss the nuance in places like this, then I'll get critiqued. Probably this episode, someone will say, I think Oscar's full of crap. Fair. And I'll also listen to why that he thinks that way. And we can have a debate as to how we'll unplug that problem. And that's the thing about Africans taking control of their narrative. That's the power in the work you're doing. I am seeing it this way, and I'm here in Africa. Probably someone in Germany who's been sponsoring ads in Africa doesn't see it that way, right? And you have been the medium to create that moment of connection between me and this person. So like, it's a very powerful thing. I think, like I said, content moves capital will move capital to Africa faster than models ever will. And that's another bet I'm willing to make.
I agree with your thesis, but more so, I think people need to look at content as a means to an end and be innovative about content outside of just influencing, for example. Mm-hmm. I admire podcasts and podcasters who, or people within that space who, I think you people have done it as well at Mantalk, for example, working around events and community building, creating shows for businesses, like what we've done with peer pressure. And as an individual with access to these many people, or as a platform having access to these many people who are thought leaders within their space, how can you then leverage both and look at both impact and also financial stability over time? I think there's a lot of talk of the creator economy, which I think if you're within this space should broaden your perspective on how me as the podcaster, how can I use this as a means to an end? If, for example, I'm in the investment space, I was talking to someone, actually Dominic, who's a host of Admin Access, and he's actually going to do a talk in Kigali, I think it's this weekend. And the person who reached out to him was because of the podcast that they have, for example. So it's not just about the content, it's about the impact that you're doing, being innovative, and also looking at what can these help me in my mission, my personal mission, whether it's in impact or whatever it is. I think it can be a really good means to your end,
Exactly.
end.
And that's the thing I'm saying. Like you're shining a light on the things that you're interested in. And you see, the moment you do that, it attracts the energy, it attracts the capital, and it attracts all of the things that you care about in your mission to get done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when the path is in linear, what keeps you anchored?
When the path is in linear, I think two things keep me anchored. First, God. I have to acknowledge that like God has really shown up in my life. And it's like I said, some points in my career I've moved from land and times to, here now in Msambweni in a village, and now then you get what I mean? You move to law firm, you do all these incredible things, but the golden thread has been God. And the second thing I'd say, outside of God's grace, is I think I have a dream that in our generation, we will see the renaissance that colonialists, the anti-colonialist movement, the Pan-African movement in the 60s and the 50s and the 40s. I think we will see the Africa they dreamed of. I believe that me and you, in this lifetime, we will see it because we have finally gotten to that point where there's enough education, there's enough belief in democracy and democratic rights, there's enough belief in human rights, right? And there's enough, I'd say, I want to use the word brotherliness. I'd say companionship across African countries, as much as Tanzania and Kenya are beefing right now. There's enough camaraderie going on across Africa that we are now beginning to realize and unlearn the trauma that was imposed on us by certain powers that be. And now we are finally able to look across each other and recognize each other as two people walking a similar journey. And I think that anchors me a lot because I want to see what part will I play in that Africa coming to pass. And I think that's going to leave a lot of generational value for me and the people I care about.
Thank you, Oscar. I think this was a very insightful episode. I think it was very insightful for our audience.
Thank you. And Alice, I don't know. Guys, I don't know. Are you feeling like, I'll tell you, Alice is not this serious in real life. I'm going to tell your audience. She's not this serious in real life. She's a lovely lady. And she's amazing and she's doing amazing things. And shout out to the work you're doing with Peer Pressure. I'm going to stay tuned for that. And the work you're doing with Honeycoin, I'm going to stay tuned for that. You're an absolute pleasure to work with and just an absolute perfect human being in terms of like what you're doing in podcasting.
Thank you. Yes. I really appreciate that. Yes. And you guys, that's your call for you to subscribe because we're working really hard to bring you the great people and the great episodes that you're seeing. Yeah, but they just need to know me as a serious person.
No, they don't. No, they do not. Goodbye.
Is that a stereotype? Now that we are still on the content, is that a stereotype that someone has to be serious?
No, like I think that you are like really funny. Like I think like your personality.
Does the audience think I'm funny?
I think, as you can tell, like everyone on set thinks you're funny. This content we're making is very serious, and we're serious people. Well, like I think, I was just saying, like I think your personality on a podcast. Like someone should also interview you at some point.
Someone should interview me. You guys can have me on Mantalk.
There, I got it out of you. There it is. So yeah, like subscribe on Mantalk.ke as well. Just shameless plug. We need your support, especially if you're a man watching this, as you've heard. We need you guys to actually make the change happen. So like, thanks for watching this.
We'll actually leave the links to your platform as well in the description. How can people contact you personally?
Yeah. So on Instagram, it's Oscar_D_KOOME. And then on LinkedIn, it's Oscar Koome. You'll find me there.
Okay, that's it.